Hey everyone, welcome back to GDXR. I'm Jonathan. In this video, we're going to look at how we can go in and we can place a fuse in any location, but have it so it only works once it's in the correct combination. So if we go through, we put this in the correct order, then it works. And we can't put fuses in the same slot if something's already in it. So we're going to cover that in this video. So if I move this over and we look at what we left off with previously, you'll see that we have our fuse box blueprint, which is set up to take our fuses. So it requires 1, 2, and 3. And then we point at our successor essentially. So what's going to win? So what I've done is I've brought in 4 models so we can actually see these and we know which fuse is going to be in the correct location. So the first thing we're going to do is open up our fuse box. The reason I didn't cover the modeling process for the fuse box and the fuses is because you might not be using it and it just makes it a little bit more difficult. So if you're doing this for something else, let's say you've got a shelf and you've got to put the bottles in the correct order, or picture frames on the wall, it's got to go in the correct order. This can all be modified to do that, and you just need to swap out the meshes as you see fit. So for the cube, which is going to be our back piece, I'm just going to bring in my fuse box that I've got, and you see the position scale is a little bit wrong, so let's fix this. And we'll move this down a little bit, just for now. And that material is wrong as well, so let's update that. Excellent, so now we've got our really muddy and dirty looking fuse box. And we actually have our colors that are going to be in the correct positions. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and place these a little bit more accurately. And we can actually scale these since it doesn't affect the size of our mesh. Excellent. So might not be 100%, but they're all in the correct location. Hit compile and save for this. So that's our fuse box. Now we go to the map, it's in the correct location. What you might need to consider though is when doing this is the actual collisions on the fuse box itself. So if we have a look at the collisions on the fuse box itself, you'll see that it's actually a box. This will stop our actors actually colliding with it. It'll probably cause them to like ping off and go into different directions. So what we can do is we can select our collision box and we can delete that for now. If you want to do it so you can add stuff on the top, you can go to collision and then add box, and you'll see that we've got our green collision box selected. You can then actually use the scale and rotate tools to place these around. So for now, we'll just place one on the bottom. Do compile and save. So now we should be able to drop a fuse on the bottom of the box. Excellent. So we have our fuse box on the scene. We've got a collision box on the bottom. We've got our slots in the correct place. Now what we can do is we can actually set up our fuses. So I've got 3, but I want to keep this as though it's just one actor. I don't want to go through and have to duplicate the actor in my content browser and then update the mesh. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and go to browse to asset so we can find our fuse. And in here, we want to go to our construction script. And all we're going to do is we're going to drag in our static mesh component. We're going to drag off our reference and we're going to go set static mesh. And we're going to plug that into our construction script. And the reason we're doing it in our construction script is because this updates in the editor. If we were to do this in the event graph, it would only work while playing the game, but we want to see it as we go through. So now I can right click on new mesh pin and promote to variable. And we can call this new mesh because we're going to make this public so we can change this in the editor. So we hit compile and save. Then we go to motion control map. You'll see everything disappears. That's because our reference hasn't actually been set to anything. It's blank. So what we can do is we can search for fuse and we'll use 1 as a reference, compile and save. And you'll see that they come in, and because they've been scaled down, they're really small. So let's just fix that. And you see it's 0.1, so we'll just do a reset to 1. But we can set these to 2, just so they're a little bit bigger and then it should be about the right size. So excellent. So now we have our fuses in the scene and they're just blue. Well, what we can do is we can actually select our fuse now. And you see we've got new mesh. We can go through and we can add in our new mesh. And the reason these are going blue is because our default actor, so in our blueprint fuse, is actually set to blue in the element. And we don't actually need that anymore. So what we can do is we can go to our motion controller map, and with the fuses selected, we can just reset the material, and that'll update back to the one that the mesh is using. So you can see now that they're actually set up correctly. We've got our mesh, got our fuses, and what we need to do is set these colors to be the correct fuses. So for A, it's going to be our red one. Green, which is our second box, will be our fuse, and then the third will be the blue. So if we hit save and then we jump into VR preview, we can still pick them up and we can place these in to the correct location to activate our light, and we can remove, place them in the scene. And if you remember, we added a collision box, so we'll actually be able to sit on the bottom of the box. So the question was, how can we place these fuses in any location so we can have incorrect combinations and the player has to figure it out, essentially. So all we need to do for this is actually change around some of the code in our fuse box. I'm actually going to close all our windows, and I'm going to create a folder called meshes, place our fuse box stuff in there so we don't get confused. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate our actual blueprint. So I'm going to duplicate fuse box, and we'll call this version 2. So this will be our any location, and we'll just drag this into the scene and rotate it, because the idea is we want to keep this as modular as possible. So if we can work with everything that we've already got, why not? We can have two versions from the same one. So in our fuse box 2, we're going to open this up, and the first thing we're going to do is actually remove 2 of our blueprints, because we're going to use a different system. So we're going to hit delete, and you'll see that it removes it from our other 2 sections. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to create a for each loop. So we're going to have an array which has our fuses in it. So every object which can go into this section will be in the array. And then we're going to use a tag to decide whether it is in the correct position or if it has that. So as we go through, this will make more sense. But for now, what we want to do is actually select our fuse required one, and we're going to convert this to an array. So you can do that by just selecting the little point in the top right, set an array and change variable type. So it goes through, and we get a load of red errors. That's absolutely fine. It's because it's not a variable anymore, or just a single variable. It's now an array. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click, search for each loop, and with our for loop created, we're going to connect our fuse, and we want to do that so it updates our actor reference, essentially. Now what we can do is we can hold Control on our keyboard to get a little hand, and that allows us to select all of these pins and plug them into the array element. And now we can position this around just a little bit so we've got some more input. And what we actually want to do is delete the bottom ones, just holding Alt, because we're going to create another for each loop for them in a minute. So we're going to hook this up to our begin overlap. So now what happens is we can set our array. It'll cycle through all of these, and it'll find out which actors can be placed into these slots, and then we'll go to the next step. But while we're doing that, we're just going to copy and paste this down, because we need to repeat the process in the bottom for the end overlap. And we'll plug this into our branch. Array element goes to there, and our cast. Now what we can do is we can move to the end, and before this we want to check if we've got the correct object in the correct position. And to do this, all we're going to do is we're going to drag off our cast, and we're going to search if actor has tag. So actor has tag, and you see it comes up as the first one we have. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to duplicate this for the base, so the end overlap, and then we need a branch for the top and a branch for the bottom. So what we're doing here is we're going to check to see if the actor has a tag. If it's true, then it'll go through. And then the bottom, we're going to do the exact same thing. So on end overlap, if the actor has tag, then we're going to set it back to 0. So we'll hook these up. So it looks like so. And now what we can do is we can actually promote this to a variable. Because we've got multiple parts, we're going to need to right click, promote a variable, and we'll do tag1. So this will essentially be the fuse location, or the tag for fuse location. And we'll plug this into the bottom. And now that'll be it for our tag. What I'm going to do is, because I'm getting compile errors, I'm going to delete these bottom ones and we'll duplicate our code down again once we've finished it. So just check everything to begin with. And we need to make sure our tag for location 1 is true, is public. That way we can set it. So if we hit compile and save and we go back to our motion controller map, you'll see that we can actually select our activator. So we're going to use the same one that we had before. Plug that in there. And now what we need to do is set our tag. Because we've got 3, I normally just do this as A, B, and C. So red will be A, green will be B, and blue will be C. And because it's our first one, we'll just set this to capital A. And we know that our red fuse will need to be that A. So if we search details, we search tag, and for our actor, we just need to give this A. So this is essentially our check. So our blueprint fuse box checks to see if the actor in that location has tag A, which we're setting here. If it does, it'll allow this to add on and then fire. You'll see that what we need to do is actually add to our array. So we've added our win stage. We've set our tags for our fuses, but now we need to tell the box what fuses or what actors we can allow in it. Because if we've got a gun, we don't want to put a gun in a fuse box, or a sword, that kind of thing. We're just going to choose it. So from an array, we're going to select all the actors that we have available. It doesn't have to be in any particular order. And now if we jump in and we test it, because we've only got this first one set up, we can now place our fuse into that location. But the issue here is, if we overlap more than just the one, we can actually put all the fuses in the same spot, and that's no good. So what we need to do now is actually create a check to see if the fuse in there, or see if there is a fuse already in there, and then if there is, don't let it do anything until it's been removed. This is pretty simple to do. All we're going to do is we're going to set a variable. So if we drag off our for each loop array and promote a variable, you see we get a new one, and we're going to call this attached actor slot 1, because we'll need one of these for each slot that we have. And we hook that up just before our cast. So on overlap, we actually set this to the first input. Then what we need to do is actually drag off our other actor, and we do equal to, and this will allow us to check to see if the actor being removed is the same one as we first set. And we drag in a reference from our attached actor, and then we can simply do a branch, so hold B on the keyboard, and we'll place this after our first branch. So now if we plug these into true, it'll now allow us to check to see if the actor being removed is the same one that was already placed. But the issue is we need to actually add a do once, because we only want to do this once before we attach the actor. So if we search do once, and then we plug that in just after the true, and they're complete, they'll only fire all of this code once. So anytime we add the first actor, it'll go through, it'll fire this code once, so it'll set the included actor. And then what we need to do is reset it on end overlap. So when the actor being removed is the same one that's already in there, we're going to do a sequence, and we're just going to reset the do once and then fire the cast. So what this allows us to do now is, if we go into compile and save and play, we can then place fuses in the random location. But you'll see that if we try and add a new fuse while there's one in there, it won't actually allow us to do that. But we can swap these all out as required. Now what we need to do is simply copy all of our code for fuse 1. So do once, and we need to set our events. So rather than having to hook them all up manually again, I'm just going to select our fuse location 2, because it's going to be for the second chunk. On begin overplay, just hold Control and drag our pins over. And overlap, do the same thing. Now we've actually duplicated our code, we need to duplicate some variables. And in this case, we need 3 tags because we've got 3 different actors. So we can duplicate, and let's call this tag 2, and then duplicate tag 3. I'm just going to reorder these just so we've got them in a nice little slot, nice little order. The next thing we need to do is duplicate our attached actor slot. So we duplicate that. So we've got 3 for the number of slots that we have available. And now what we can do is go through and replace the variables that we need to change. So for each slot, we need to go through. So in the second one, we're going to drag over our attached slot. And you see if we drag in our actual variable and hover over one that we already have, it'll update to the new one. So we're going to do that for both. So the set and the get. And we need to do that for the fuse location too. So we drag that in. And we also need to do it for the tag. So tag 2. And then we just do this for all 3. So we'll update these, have it compile and save. And if we jump over to our motion controller map, you remember that we have to set our new tags. So I'm going to do B. So slot green will be B, and then slot blue will be C. And we just make sure that we've got our tags set. So we don't. So blue will be C, red is A, and green is B. And we jump back in. We can now place all our fuses in different slots, and it won't actually activate until we put these in the correct locations. So just to cover what we've actually done is we converted our variable to an array to store multiple references to our actors, so our fuses. And we then cycle through these to check which ones they are. We then check to see if the overlapping actor is the same as one of these fuses. If it is, then we know we can actually place it into the slot. And then we set our attached actor in the slot. So this is just a reference to say if something is in this and it's this blueprint. Then we go through and we cast to the actual fuse blueprint just so we can get some information from it. And we check to see if it actually has a tag. So if the actor has a tag, then we know it's going to activate our blueprint. But we also activate the drop location within the blueprint so it can slot into fuse 1. On the end overlap, we check to see if it'll actually end the result. If it does, we go through. And then we check to see if the attached actor is the same one being removed. So if this actor or this variable here is being removed from the overlap, then it'll go through and it'll reset the do once. So we can add another actor. And then we go through and we just cast to the fuse. We check to see if it's connected. And we check to see if it has a tag. And then it's essentially duplicated from the top to the next fuse location. So if you've got different ones of these collision boxes placed around your scene, you can have different actors go into it and then go from there. So now we actually have 2 fuse boxes. So the left one only allows us to put it in the correct order, so it activates. But the one on the right allows us to put it in any order that we want. So we can have it completely wrong, but the player might have to then figure out which order we put the fuses in to see if it works. So this was a little bit more of a complicated video just for the for each loops and the array actors and multiple variables and stuff like that. But hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps a lot with the channel and being able to help new people figure it out. If you have any questions or if there's anything you want to see, jump over to the Discord and let us know. We're always there to help. We've got over 500 members in there now, which is super cool, all doing VR development. Finally, a big thank you to my Patreons for making this possible and helping with this series. If you are a Patreon and you want access to the files for this project, they'll be up there now, and you'll be able to download and play around and possibly drag and drop it into your own game. So until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.